It's my great pleasure to begin this morning's session by introducing our next speaker, who really is someone with tremendous experience and insights to share with all of us. This is a man who has been researching issues concerning UFOs, extraterrestrials, for over 5 decades. Since the 1950s, Dr. Frank Strangers has been presenting to audiences the research he has done on the UFO phenomenon and on the extraterrestrial presence. And he has done some phenomenal work in bringing to the public's attention not only the reality of the UFO phenomenon and of extraterrestrials visiting us, but also extraterrestrials actually walking amongst us. And this is something he will talk about in his presentation. He has also done some very important work concerning the Dead Sea Scrolls and has confirmed that much of the information in the Dead Sea Scrolls has been withheld from the general public, and some of the reasons for it are connected with the extraterrestrial presence, that the Dead Sea Scrolls do mention this and mention how that presence was very important for some of the pioneers and the key figures in the religions in the Middle East. So Dr. Strangers has had a very important background in terms of law enforcement. He's got multiple degrees, honorary degrees, diplomas, awards, tremendous experience, and has been recognised through the various organisations he's been involved with for his service to the general public in government service. And of course, for those of us interested in this UFO phenomenon, he's done tremendous work in bringing that to the public arena. So I welcome Dr. Frank Strangers.
With applause like that, I hate to open my mouth. I want to thank our dear hosts, Dr. and his beautiful princess. Let's give them a good hand for all the good work they've done. And I want to thank those technicians that are doing all the unseen work here. And I want to thank all the helpers. God bless you all. Now, this is my meeting, right? I can do whatever I want to. I can say whatever I desire. Let's all stand together for a moment. I want you to turn around, shake hands, and give a good hug to at least 3 people and tell them I love you today. Go ahead. All right, that's enough. No one gave me a hug. Not one. Oh, God bless you. God bless you. Oh. Now I can go on. Oh,
Frank, thank you. One last one.
One
last
bless
one.
your heart. To our dear friends from Japan, how many are here from Japan? Would you please stand? Let's give them a good hand. That's wonderful. Arigato. And to our friends from Mexico, would you please stand? Buenos dias, hermanos. That's wonderful. And the rest of you, you're welcome too, of course. Now, how many of you in this audience have ever seen an unidentified flying object? Would you raise your hands? Quite a few. How many have never seen anything unusual in the skies? All right, some of you haven't moved yet. How many of you don't give a hoot whether you see them or not? Okay. Question, how many of you would like to see something unusual? I knew I'd get you to stay. All right. We'll see what we can arrange before the meeting is finished. I thoroughly enjoyed the wisdom, the understanding, and the knowledge of all the speakers thus far, and I feel privileged to stand on the same platform as they have, including beautiful Angelica. She did a fantastic job last night, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to move rather quickly on what I've got to say today because I want to get to the Dead Sea Scroll mysteries. The UFO phenomena has been with us for literally thousands and thousands of years. This is not something that just happened in 1947. Prehistory reveals the existence of spacecraft as well as individuals from other worlds. And I'm going to go into that quite thoroughly in just a few moments. Examining the origins of UFOs, first of all, the experts say, that's the government experts, there's no such thing as a UFO. I saw a bumper sticker when I left Los Angeles to come to Hawaii, and it said, UFOs are real, the Air Force doesn't exist. But number one, figments of the imagination. Some people say that these people do not see anything actually. It's a psychological surge. They see something that isn't there. Figments of the imagination. Well, I beg to differ because I've questioned people from all walks of life since 1945. And I'm thoroughly convinced that many of the people, not all of them, but many of them, most of them have actually had a strange and unusual experience of seeing something in the skies. Some of them come out of the water. Some of them go diving into the waters. Both oceans, rivers all over the world, oceans all over the world. The second possibility, UFOs are secret devices of the United States government. Now, before I say one word more, please understand I'm not at odds, I'm not at war with the United States government. Despite what's happening in Washington, I still think we've got the best government and the most beautiful flag on the face of the earth. That's my feeling. Now, the government has been actively engaged in actually building, constructing unidentified flying objects. They have not gone as fast as those from outer space, but they have mystified people who have looked into the skies and have witnessed strange and unusual objects traveling at speeds exceeding 20,000 miles per hour, violating every known law of aerodynamics, but those are not created by the government. They're extraterrestrial in origin. The third possibility, some people say, well, they come from Russia. Well, Russia has been also engaged in building such mechanics, such as flying saucers for many, many years. Even when it was called the Soviet Union, they were busy trying to construct a spacecraft to go from this planet to other planets, but they have not fully succeeded. The fourth possibility is that some of them were created by the Nazis during the World War II, which is absolutely true. If you take a list of my books and tapes from my table today, you'll see I have a book called Nazi UFOs and Secret Bases on Earth. They have actually created and flown a flying saucer disc. And at the end of the war, the Fuhrer insisted that they create such a disc in order to turn the tide against the Allies. They came up with a prototype, a fantastic ship that did fly, not faster than sound, but it did fly, and it mystified people who saw this strange aerial object in the skies. And then toward the end of the war, the scientists who were involved in this which I had the privilege of meeting in Germany some years ago, they said we decided to take the whole thing, the golden goose, the eggs, the prototypes and everything, and by special arrangement with the U-boat commander, went down where? Into South America, especially Argentina. And that's where they escaped. Another possibility is that these are instruments and people who have mastered interdimensional flight. And we're going to couple that with the next possibility, interdimensional flight, which is not impossible today, and also time travel. These are theories that have also been postulated by investigators of the United States Air Force. And then the other possibility is that they're coming from the inner earth. Oh, inner earth, come on now. My friends, I think I have some slides today that'll show the opening at the South Pole. And if you think that there's no civilization on the inside of this planet, you're very mistaken. The earth is hollow. There are civilizations upon civilizations on the inside of this planet. Some come from outer space. Some are remnants, descendants from the great flood of Noah. And if we have time, we'll go into that because we're going to be talking about the giants in the land today. And then the final possibility is that they're from outer space. Now, how many of you in this audience believe that we are not alone in the universe? Okay. How many of you believe that if people are from outer space, they will look like us? Now, I'm going to ask you another few questions. I want you to look at me. Don't look around. I said, don't look around. If they come from outer space and they look like us, how many of you think that there could be some of them in this audience today? I told you not to look around. It's amazing. Before you discuss the possibility of people from outer space, you've got to be very careful to whom you speak. And I was in a hotel in Des Moines, Iowa, after a UFO conference. The conference was over, the convention was all finished. We were walking into the coffee shop. My then-time wife met some people who she recognized, and you know how ladies are, they love to stand and talk. I said, I'll see you later, I'll be in the coffee shop. And I walked into the coffee shop, sat down at the counter, minding my own business. How many of you know what trouble you can get to minding your own business? And this waitress comes from clear across the other end of the restaurant. She says, hey, ha, 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 are you the flying saucer preacher? What am I going to say? I said, yes. And as she drew closer, she said, did you see any little green men in there? I said, no, not one showed up. And as she came and stood right in front of the seat where I was sitting at the counter, she plunked down the glass of water, and I looked at her and I said, there are two of us. And her lower lip began to quiver. And she stooped over to examine the empty seat next to me. And I said, my wife will be in just a moment. She grabbed her chest. Do you know they had to send her home in a taxi cab? So be very careful to whom you speak concerning UFOs, because they may not quite understand. All right, if they're from outer space, where are they possibly from? The information that I've been given by Commander Valiant Thor from the interior of the planet Venus is that practically every planet in our system and other systems are populated with people from other worlds. Only the majority of them live on the interior of the planet. Now, my research up until 1959 was confined to the nuts and bolts of UFOs. And then I had an experience that changed my life forever. As a minister, as a pastor of a church at that time and full-time evangelist, I would go from church to church and I would show pictures of UFOs on a board. These were black and white pictures, very few in color. And I'd be able to explain to the audience thus and so and thus and so. Time, date, place, witnesses, names, addresses, everything. But then I received a telephone call at my home in Irvington, New Jersey A call from a former Air Force photographer by the name of August C. Roberts. And Augie gets on the phone and he said, Dr. Frank, guess what? I said, what? He said, I met a man from another planet. I said, what have you been smoking? He said, do you want to hear this or not? I said, yes, please, please. Where did you see him? He said, not only did I see him, I took his picture. I said, fine. What makes you think he's from outer space? And where was this? He said, at the Lawn UFO lecture at the home of Howard Menger in Highbridge, New Jersey. I said, that's interesting. What makes you think he's from outer space? Well, he said, Frank, when he looked at me, I got the distinct impression he could look straight through me. I said, my father does that to me now. He said, come on, now, you want to hear this? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. What else? He said, well, the man could speak every known language and dialect on the face of the earth. He said there were people at that convention from foreign countries, and he could speak to them, including to some people from Africa. He spoke in their dialect. I said, well, that's interesting. I said, what else? He said the guy had no fingerprints. Oh, that interested me. As a former special investigator, I know the science of fingerprinting. Everybody has fingerprints. He said his tips of his fingers were as bald as a boiled egg. I said, is that right? That interested me. I said, all right, I'll take the pictures. I'll put them on the board at the universities, colleges, and churches that I address on the subject, and I'll say this is what Augie Roberts said, which I did. I was invited to Washington, D.C. to a church pastored by Dr. John Mears, a congregation of about 2,000 people. I put the pictures of this man, I didn't know his name, on the board and told people, this is a picture of a man who claims to be from another planet. And the picture was taken by Augie Roberts, an Air Force photographer. And all I know about him is what I'm telling you today. He stands about 6 foot tall, weighs about 180 pounds, 185 pounds. And this is what he looked like a normal human being. And I had this picture up on the board. At the end of my presentation, I was signing autographs to my first book, which was called Saucerama, and people were coming along the platform, and I was just signing and signing, and a lady comes to the platform. And they teach you in seminary, you've got to be nice to the ladies, especially in church. And she says to me, Dr. Strange, I said, Strangers. She said, I've got to see you alone. Oh boy. I said, ma'am, you know, can you wait just I got a couple of hundred more books to sign here. I've got to see you now. And she was irritated at me. And she straightened up and reached into her purse, and she produced out of her purse an ID card that said United States Government, something similar to this, United States Government, Pentagon Building, Department so-and-so, room number so-and-so. On the other side was her photograph with a number beneath her photograph. I was converted immediately. I asked the pastor to borrow his key to his office. This lady wanted to talk to me. He said, yeah, okay. And he gives me the key. As we started to leave the platform, we passed the photograph of this stranger from another planet, and she points to him. She said, how would you like to meet him personally? Well, what would you say? My Father in heaven. I said, of course. Where is he? She said, at the Pentagon. I said, oh, my Father. If the government was going to pull a fast one on Frank Strangers, that would be the place to do it, at the Pentagon. Well, walked into the pastor's office. She pointed her finger. I don't know why they always point their finger at my nose. She said, can you, as a former special investigator, still follow instructions? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, to the letter, yes, ma'am. She said, you meet me downstairs in front of your hotel at 8 o'clock sharp tomorrow morning, and I'll take you to where he is. I said, at the Pentagon? She said, mm-hmm. Her name was Nancy Warren. I didn't get much sleep last night. When I talked to my parents, I didn't tell them about that on the phone. 8 o'clock tomorrow, the following morning, I was down there on the cold sidewalk. I was down there at 7:30. And it was cold that December. It started to snow. And here her car pulls up, she opens the door, she said, "Good morning, brother." I said, "Good morning," got in the car. She started driving toward the Pentagon. Now, if you're familiar with the Pentagon traffic, the flow of traffic goes to the left and then to the right. She turns to the left abruptly, pulls up against the fence. There was a security guard there with a tablet. He looked at her, he went like that. He looked at me. He went like this. Naturally, I went right back to him. Got out of the car, fastened my coat. She reached into her purse and took out her ID, opened her little coat and suit jacket, and she pinned her ID on her blouse. As we got in line, people from the military, people in plain clothes, all in one line, and a guard who was getting taller and taller as closer as they got to him. And I said, "Nancy, I don't have any ID on my shirt or anyplace else." She said, "Just do what I do." I said, "What are you going to do?" She said, "Get back in line, will you?" Which I did. And she walked in front of the security guard, and she opened her jacket like this. And then walked right on by him. And that put me first in line. And behind me was a military man, and I hesitated. He cleared his throat. What did I do? I walked by the security guard, went like that. Expecting to be grabbed by the neck. "Wise guy, what are you trying to do here?" Nothing happened. I caught up with Nancy. She said, "Fine, that was very good." She said, "We have one more." I said, "One more what?" She said, "One more security guard." And sure enough, another lineup. Another security guard. I was third in line. I kept looking at my empty pocket. I was second in line. Then I was first in line. She walked in front of me, opened her jacket, walked on by. I didn't even look at his face. I just went like that and walked on by. He never stopped me. Walked down the corridor, turned to the right. At the very corner office, that was the office part of the building that was demolished because of that plane crash some years ago. And here is an office door, no number, no description. She said, "He's in there." I said, "Well, thank you very much." I had my hand on the doorknob and she started to walk away. I suddenly spun around and said to her, "How do I get out of here?" She said, "Oh boy, my God, you're some investigator." She said, "Do the same thing as when you came in. Open your jacket, but make sure you get behind someone." I said, "Okay," and it worked the second time. Now, here my hand is on the doorknob. I open the door slowly. Straight in front of me, two flat-top desks, two Air Force officers writing. In the far corner to the right was a sergeant, Air Force sergeant. He was busy typing. I cleared my throat 2 or 3 times. They paid me no mind whatsoever. Paid no attention. I opened the door behind me, shut it again. They didn't know I was there. And then my attention was distracted when I saw something moved to my right behind me. And here is this man coming toward me, 6 foot tall, about 185 pounds, soft, wavy brown hair, brown eyes, with his hands stretched out, whose picture I've been carrying for several years around the world. Here's a man from another planet. He said, "Hello, Frank, how are you?" How did he know my name? We had a marvelous half-hour conversation. I'll show you his picture on the screen in a few moments. I said, "Where are you from?" He said, "I'm from your planet that your Bible calls the morning and the evening star." I said, "Venus?" He said, "Yes, the inside of Venus." I said, "How did you get here?" He said, "I came in a saucer craft which is called Victor 1. Now, speaking of Victor 1, I have a beautiful painting, a big poster of Victor 1 that I want every one of you to take a look at when you go to my table. And there's another big chart, which is the Starship, which is presently 100 miles in a fixed orbit. I want you to take one of those, either one of those, free of charge. Now, what do you think about that? And as long as they last. Take them as long as they last, okay? Now, I said, what is your name? He said, Commander Valiant Thor. He said, you call me Val. I said, thank you. And how long have you been here? 3.5 years, this coming March 16th of 1960. And what have you been doing here? He said, I've been conversing with the President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower, and Mr. Nixon, who I met personally some years afterward, and several members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He said, I brought a gift for them. And this gift was in my hands, and I looked into the eyes of Mr. Eisenhower. I said, this information will do away with sickness, disease, and even death in the United States, and then you can share it with other nations. Gave it to the President. President Eisenhower received this information. It took them over 1 year to get back to the commander. He was their guest for 3 years at the Pentagon. And 1 year later, the President came back, met with the commander again, with this information in his hands, shaking his head. He said, I'm sorry, we cannot accept this information because it will ruin the economy of the United States. I said, in other words, the drug trust would have to take the gas pipe. And he agreed. And I said, you've been at the Pentagon for 3.5 years? He said, yes. I'm happy to announce today that you will see the entire story plus more information that took place at the Pentagon while Commander Val was there, because this book has been scripted for a major motion picture, and we're hoping that it'll be shot next year. And guess who wants to play the lead? John Travolta. So you pray that we get the budget all right and that it'll go into a production by this time next year. The commander told me things that I never knew concerning my own private life. I had to check with my parents and grandparents and in order to check the validity of his statements, and they were all true. He told me things that were going to come to pass in the United States, including 2007. He wrote a book called Outwitting Tomorrow. Outwitting Tomorrow is a fantastic treatise of lessons for people who want to know the whole truth. We got these out there at the book table too. It's called Outwitting Tomorrow. Isn't that a title? Now, after the 30 minutes was up, I did my thing, went out. I was picked up by a friend of Nancy Warren and driven back to my hotel. Before I left the hotel that Monday morning, the pastor and his assistant were helping me get together my stuff for the airport. A knock came at the door. Two well-dressed gentlemen, no smiles, all business, said to me, "Are you Dr. Strange?" I said, "Strangers." Here we go again. And their remarks were as follows, word for word. "Dr. Strangers, if you value your reputation, you will not repeat anything that took place with you at the Pentagon this past Thursday morning." I said, "What took place? What are you talking about? What took place?" Believe me, at that time, I wasn't about to tell anybody. But he said, I heard about people like this. Oh, I'm talking about picking your pocket. Jeez. Where was I? The two guys identified themselves as Air Force intelligence. They didn't look too intelligent, I'm sorry to say. At first I thought they were from the CIA. You know what that organization is? That's the Confusion in Action Group. But then I thought they were FBI. That's the Fraternal Brotherhood of Italians. No, that wasn't them either. So anyhow, I said, okay. I didn't say a word about this experience to anyone, but I wrote a book on it. When I went back to Brooklyn, New York to be with my dad, my mom, my dad greets me at the front door, and he was from Italy, so was Mom. I lost both of them a few years ago, one at 94 and one at 93. My dad looks at me and says, "Oh, Frank, I'm going to pray for you. First you come here with the flying sausages." I said, no, Dad, sausage. "And now you come with a man from another world. Oh, Mamma mia, I'm going to pray for you." And he did. He prayed for me. One day, after the commander said he'd meet me in 1 year to the day, March 16th at 8 o'clock in the morning, a voice comes out of the back of my car in Beverly Hills. I was driving to have a meeting with an attorney. He said, "Hello, Frank, how are you?" I nearly ran a red light. It was the commander. I said, "Why can't you just come in the front seat?" Which he did later. And we had wonderful fellowship and communion from that day to this day. I was invited to visit Victor 1, that beautiful spacecraft of his, in a place called San Felipe down in Mexico. And my meeting on board that was at his invitation because he wanted me to come down to meet with him on board the craft, my first visit, for a specific reason. Back up 3 days. My phone rings. A man on the telephone says, "This is Robert Kennedy. I'd like to talk to you." I said, "This is who?" I said, "Are you some kind of wise guy?" And then all of a sudden I was convinced it was Robert Kennedy. He said, "What is this, all this stuff about this guy from another planet? Is this real or is this a bunch of crap?" I said, "No, it's no crap, I'm sorry to tell you. I'm happy to tell you, I mean." And he said, "I want to see you." I said, "Fine. Why don't you come right over to my office? I understand you're on the East Coast. Come on and visit with me." He said, "Okay," and he hung up. 2 days later, this big black limousine flanked by highway patrol officers pulls into my street. My neighbor's looking through the curtain. Boy, they got Frank now. And who's in there but Mr. Kennedy and his aides? They came in, no handshake, no greeting, just cold as... I don't think I've ever met such a cold person. He said to me, "All right, now let's have the lowdown on this guy from..." I said, "Don't call him a guy." I said, "His name is Commander Valiant Thor." He said, "All right, be that as it may." He said, "I want to ask him 2 questions." I said, "Yes, continue." "What are these questions, may I ask?" He said, "I want to ask him, number 1, who the hell really killed my brother? And number 2, I'm running for the presidency this year. What are my chances?" I said, "Okay, well, you write those questions down. You can go into my office and write these questions." He said, I don't write. I said, "Well, this conversation is closed then, big shot." But he finally condescended, went into my office, wrote up the questions, gave me the envelope. He said, "Make sure he gets these now." I said, "Okay." No goodbye, no drop dead, nothing. He just left. And then I was invited by the commander to meet him at the airport in San Diego. He met me with a car. We drove to San Felipe, way down south, south of Tijuana. And I saw this spacecraft sitting on the water, as you'll see in the poster that you're going to receive today. I was taken by boat with the commander to the ship. I'm speaking as quickly as possible now about this. And here we are sitting in the ship. He said, "Now you go through that room, take all your clothes off, your shoes, everything off, walk through that outfit, and at the other end of the room, you'll be given a white coverall and boots, very similar to the one I showed you with the Pentagon. The one he showed me at the Pentagon was all one piece. He ran his hand, after putting the 2 pieces of garments together, ran his hand up to his neck. I could not find the opening. They just fused together. And then he said at the Pentagon, he said, "This is the outfit that your government has been testing for quite a long time." He said they gave it the acid test. The acid rolled off and kind of hole in the floor. They fired shots at it, no penetration whatsoever. They even tried the experimental laser at that time. He said it didn't even warm the surface. sometime later, after my book was published, Stranger at the Pentagon, I appeared on the Art Linkletter show, and when I told about this garment, you have no idea how many calls I got from the garment industry in New York. So, here we are on the ship. I'm introduced to the commander's wife. His name is Dina. His daughter's name is Valdina. Isn't that a beautiful combination? And I met Vice Commander Don, who comes to my office quite often, and this beautiful young lady, Teal, red hair, green eyes, beautiful complexion. And I'm sitting in this kind of a living room and exchanging conversation with them, very beautiful people. And they make you feel at home. And those of you, like some who belong to our organization, the National Investigations Committee, and those who attend our meeting, the Inner Circle, which some of you are here today, they have actually had the privilege of going on board Victor 1 and enjoying the pleasures of that ship, which is now parked at the edge of Lake Mead in Nevada. And here we are sitting in the living room, and all of a sudden, I have to go to the bathroom. Well, that was not too unusual, because I go to the bathroom once in a while. And then I'm wondering what's going to happen next, because I don't voice that I have to go to the bathroom. Vice Commander Teal says, Dr. Frank, go and stand in front of that door there. It'll slide to one side, you know. And I did. And I went inside that beautifully appointed bathroom. The door slid shut behind me. I sat down. I took care of my business. And when I was finished, I nearly had a seizure. I could not find any toilet paper. I said, oh my God. I prayed in English, I prayed in Italian, Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic, Korean. I couldn't find it. Finally, in my mind, I hear the voice of Vice Commander Teal. She says, honey, oh boy, do you see those 3 buttons to your right? I said, yes. She said, press the top button first, the second one down, press that, and then finally press the third one. Well, before I pressed that, I didn't know whether I was going to be ejected and dipped in the ocean or what. But I pressed it. I said, thank you, Lord. And a blast of hot air. I thought I was going to go flying to the ceiling. And after that come down, I pushed the second one. That was about half speed. And by the time I got to the third button, I felt powdered and changed like a little baby. I got up. Got into my coveralls again, walked out, the door shut behind me, I sat down, no one said a word. The Vice Commander Teal said, did everything come out all right? I said, yes, thank you very much. Well, we've had fantastic information come from the commander, which is in our monthly newsletter called the Space Link. We also have applications on my table. The Space Link comes out once a month. He gives us information which we pass on to our membership. He gives them a personal message from month to month. And some people, when they read the message, they say, how did he know that? But you'd be surprised what they know. Now, before I leave this story, we're having an Inner Circle meeting on the 3rd and 4th of next month of June at the Rio Hotel in Las Vegas. That'll be our 29th meeting of the Inner Circle. I'm sorry to say the Inner Circle membership is not for everyone, only those that are spiritually advanced to appreciate the spiritual teachings that are given by the commander. If you're interested in that, take one of those brochures out there, the information, contact me. There still may be time for you to attend. Will someone come up and erase this white section, please? Because I'm going to go right into the slides.
So what happened with Robert Kennedy's question?
With Robert Kennedy, the reason he invited me to the spacecraft was to see something awful. We were sitting in this living room. He said, please follow me. We went into a special room that had a wide screen that looked like a 3D presentation. The lights came on. The scene was the back portion of the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. Bobby Kennedy is walking along, Rosie Greer right behind him, several hundreds of people packing in that room. And suddenly, shots ring out. And Bobby Kennedy went down. I looked at the commander. He had tears in his eyes. He said, I gave this man the information he wanted, but he didn't follow my advice. I told him, don't go anywhere near the election this year. Try it in 4 years, and you'll probably win. But how many times have you known of people who you've given advice to and they don't take your advice and they have to suffer the consequences? And I'll say one more thing. Sirhan Sirhan is sitting in prison for something he didn't do. If you want to know who really shot him, you talk to me privately. I said to Val, who was responsible for the shooting of the President of the United States? And he told him was, I'm not allowed to say that in public, but I'll tell you privately if you ask me later. So that was a very sad incident that overshadowed my first visit to the beautiful Victor 1. Make sure you get yourself a copy of that outside. All right, quickly now, this is the Andromeda Galaxy. Some months ago, I was invited to one of our churches in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I was privileged to see the largest telescope in the world. I met with some SETI people, and they said, we've been receiving strange signals from out of the Andromeda Galaxy for many years, but we, after deciphering them, were not allowed to give the information to the public. We were forbidden because we know who signs our checks. I said, that's fine, thank you very much. Here's the planet what? Earth. Right down there is the Outrigger Hotel, someplace around there. So this is as it's seen from space. This is a picture taken in New Mexico by Paul Villa some years ago. As this craft came closer to the ground, you can see it opened, the shell on top opened, revealing a set of porthole windows. There it is, as it started leaving the area. Now this is on the right shoulder, this UFO up here, on the right shoulder of this picture here, which is hanging at the Sistine Chapel in Rome. Unusual. This is a craft that came down in Australia some years ago, and oddly enough, about 30 days after, all these sheep who ate the grass where the ship had landed died, reasons unknown. This is upside down. Nevertheless, it was taken in Riverside, California. There it is again, taken by Dr. Daniel Fry. This is a close-up of one of the famous pictures that was allegedly taken by who knows who? Who?
Billy Myers.
Right, Billy Myers. I have had experts look at some of these pictures in Japan, the negatives, and the information we got back is that these pictures are absolutely 100% true. Look at the size of that craft. Very seldom do you find UFOs that are photographed in formation or in pairs. There's another shot of the Billy Myers series. Again, two of them taken, another one a very strange, elongated type. Here's one at a distance, a close-up. Do you think people would panic if they saw this? Some people would, don't you agree? But none of you here today, I'm sure. All right, I'm going to rush through these. This was taken in Seoul, Korea by a military officer not too many years ago. This was a strange object that followed a jetliner from New York to London. And when the lady took this with a Polaroid camera, she sent it up to the pilot. The pilot and the co-pilot came back to talk with her. And then they radioed ahead to the authorities, and they said that please meet us at the airport. And when the authorities questioned her on board the plane, they came up with the idea that what she actually took a picture of was a picture of the tail of the plane on the window of the plane. And the other expert pointed out, in order for her to do that, she would have been on the wing of the plane during that flight. And this lady assured us in writing she was not on the wing of the plane during that flight. All right, this gentleman came to my home many years ago, was scheduled to speak at my convention at Anaheim Convention Center. His name is Colonel James Irwin. He said he felt a very strange vibration when he landed on the moon. You notice the aura around his body? He had a spiritual experience which he never forgot. This is called Earthrise, photographed from the moon. Another shot of the Earth photographed in space. This is the famous one that stirred up the sand at the side of the road, taken by Heflin, who was a highway engineer. UFOs were over Washington during the Truman administration, which had him talking to himself. These UFOs around the Capitol flying in forbidden area. As a pilot, I know that you're not supposed to fly over certain government restricted areas. And a strange thing, the pilots went up to check on this. They couldn't find anything. And then without warning, the UFOs became visible to them, surrounded the planes, and the report is that that night, many of those pilots got religion. Another shot of a UFO in Albuquerque, New Mexico, very small craft, touching down to the ground. 3 legs telescope open, but there's a series of round balls in the sky as well as rolling in the grass. This is the first time in America anything like this was ever photographed. This is a famous picture taken by Gardner over San Francisco, California. And after the picture was taken, all the people down below were visited by officials from both military and federal government and state government that if they took any pictures of this craft, they should surrender them as good citizens, to which I would say bull. All right, these pictures were taken in Cincinnati, Ohio. According to the report I've received from the gentleman who gave me these was Commander Bethune, United States Navy officer. And he said this was an amazing ship because it let out such tremendous power beneath it, firepower that they've never seen before. Look at that. It's engulfed in fire almost. Now, we're talking about the hollow earth before. There's an opening at the North Pole and an opening at the South Pole. In the very center, there's supposed to be a central sun. Now, people have doubted this for the longest time. However, the United States government sent up a weather satellite not too long ago. This is what they discovered at the South Pole. The first time around, it was covered over with clouds. Then it looked kind of dark and suspicious. On the third time around, this is what they photographed. Now, the United States government has attempted to recover these pictures for a long time. And if I would tell you where I got these pictures, I'd have to kill you. Now we're in the backyard of Howard Menger, High Bridge, New Jersey, and there are several people, a young lady and 2 men, claiming to be from another planet. This is Jill from the ship. She's on the Starship now. The second one is Vice Commander Don, and the other one is Commander Val. Jill, Don, and Val. And this is what he looks like today. This is the picture that was taken by Augie Roberts in 1959. And this is exactly what he looked like when I spoke with him last Sunday. And he said he wants me especially to send you greetings from him and the ship and everybody on board because they all love you and they know that you're truth seekers. And he told me to give you some information about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now we're going to go into Qumran. This is the area not too far from Jerusalem. It's called the Qumran Mountain area where the Dead Sea Scrolls were located. This, as the story goes, in 1947, a young lad was chasing after his uncle's goats. And one of the goats got away. And he was going to catch hell unless he brought all the goats home again. Nevertheless, he found large jars. This lad, after throwing stones in an open cave, and something didn't sound right, so he climbed up there. He discovered the jars, and he pulled out the jars, and these are some of the fragments that are now laid out in the basement in a secret compartment in the city of Jerusalem. They have found these Dead Sea Scrolls. This is some of the community where they believe the scrolls were written in the Qumran Mountains. These are some fragments. I'm showing you this for a purpose. They made one horrible mistake. They violated every law of scriptural interpretation and revelation. Instead of translating all the words that they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, you see the empty spaces? They filled them in with their own mind, with their own thinking, with what they thought they should say. That's a violation. These are some more of the caves. And this is one of the lessons that you're going to find in the book Outwitting Tomorrow, that the commander says you need to develop these 5 points of your star: spiritual, mental, social, physical, and financial. Before I go any further, question. I don't want to embarrass anybody here today, but how many of you, be honest with me, are having financial difficulties? Let's see your hand. I want you to stand. Don't be ashamed. Stand. Because I'm going to pray a special prayer. And you rich people, you just pray with me, okay? Lift your hand with me, please. Now, when space people pray, they don't close their eyes. They don't put their head between their knees and howl. They don't do that. They open their hands like such, and they look up, and they talk to Almighty God, person to person. And that's what I'm going to do today. My loving Father, repeat after me. My loving Father, I thank you because you are the Alpha and the Omega. I thank you that I'm in this convention today. I thank you that you promised that if I ask you, I will have good health and I will prosper. Therefore I pray in the name of Almighty God that you will open the windows of good health and financial blessings to me right now. Amen. Now turn to your neighbor and shake their hand and tell them, I believe what I just prayed. Go ahead. All right, the Dead Sea Scrolls were first discovered in 1947, the same year that Kenneth Arnold saw that UFO group over Mount Rainier. Remember that? He called them flying saucers. He coined the phrase. The commander on board Victor 1 took me into a room which is called the library. He provided me with large silver dollar-shaped coins that had grooves in them. He said, put these in the compartment slot and you will see any phase of history, any phase whatsoever. I chose the Dead Sea Scrolls series. He gave me facts, figures, names, dates, and places regarding the Dead Sea Scrolls that have never been released to the public. I'm sorry today I only have 5 sets left of the trilogy on my desk. So the first 5 out there, if you want to get them, you can. If you want to order them, take one of our order sheets from my table. We'll be very glad to send you the set. I received a call from Jerusalem from Rabbi Tov, T-O-V. I don't hesitate to name names. He talks to me on the phone. He says, "You're Dr. Strange?" I said, "Here we go again. Strangers." They call me worse. I said, "Yes, well, how can I help you?" He said, "This is Rabbi Tov, and I'm in charge of the Dead Sea Scrolls." He said this all in one sentence. "And you have no right to release the information you're about to release." I said, "Who said so?" He said, "I said so." And then he informed me of a bombshell that I was not aware of. He said, "These are the sole property of an organization that you're well familiar with." I said, "Who might that be?" He said, "The Rockefeller Foundation." I said, my friend, you are crazy. This information is going to be released because people need to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. That got him teed off. He said, you have no right to disclose this information. It hasn't been cleared by us. I said, too bad. He said, where did you get this? I wasn't about to tell him I got it from a man from Venus. He said, you should be put to death. And the person who gave these to you should be put to death. I hung up on him. Called me back. He said, now listen, let's be honest with each other. I said, yes, it's about time you did. You and your people who are in charge of all this. He said, don't you realize if you release this information, it'll shake the foundation of organized religion? To which I said, thank you, Lord. And he hung up on me. The Dead Sea Scrolls contains information concerning the works and teachings and words and blessings and warnings and prophecies of our Lord and Master Jesus Christ. It contains information that's not found in the 66 books of the Sacred Cow version of the Bible, which I call the King James. Let me tell you something quickly about the King James Bible. King James had a birthday coming up, and he had his translators working feverishly almost around the clock to finish that volume called the King James Bible by his birthday. Otherwise, their heads would come off. And the people who are advising these translators had the scissors, and they were cutting up some of the scrolls, saying that this information would not be good, would not be feasible, because the people's mind are not capable of attaining the truth that's found therein, which, again, I say bull. I believe the people should have all the information available. It contains information about certain things that are going to be taking place in the last days of time of mankind on this planet. The Dead Sea Scrolls, which are in 3 parts, number 1, 2, and 3, encapsulate information of how you as an individual can help yourself. Now, many people are walking around the world today with their hand out. They're looking for a handout all the time. And then even when they receive, they want more without giving anything in return. I'm going to give you a revelation that's mentioned in the Dead Sea Scrolls that may encourage many of you. You today are children of God. How many of you believe that? Say aye. I further believe it's no accident that you came to this convention today. I don't believe in accidents. I believe everything is by divine order. Everything is in divine order. I mean everything. I believe you're going to see the day, as those of you who stood on your feet a while ago, you're going to receive that healing that you need, according to the Dead Sea Scrolls. You're going to receive financial blessings far beyond that which you have ever anticipated. And if you read Outwitting Tomorrow, you're going to find some things in that book that are also mentioned in the Dead Sea Scrolls as far as prosperity and good health and longevity are concerned. I believe you're going to witness a time which is prophesied in the book of Joel, which is enlarged upon in the Dead Sea Scrolls, that in the latter times, the Hebrew translation in the last days, Aramaic translation in the times of the end, you're going to see a tremendous worldwide spiritual awakening. Not an awakening of religion, I'm sorry. We got enough religion in the world today. They're like some other religious organizations that like to withhold the truth from their people, because if they tell them the whole truth, they're afraid of losing power. And that's their secret, of the hold of power and authority over people, and that way they cannot think for themselves. Let me tell you something quickly about my dad. I told you he's from Italy. He went to the store one day in Brooklyn, New York, to buy meat. He went in the meat market. To buy bread, he went to the bakery. To buy groceries, he went to the fruit store. And he had 3 or 4 bundles he was carrying. And on his way out the door, he meets a tall stranger who said, Ti posso aiutare, Natale? Can I help you, Natalie? Call him by his first name in Italian. My dad says, oh, sure, that's so nice. And he helped them, took the packages. They got on a bus. And the stranger says to my dad, have you heard from Frank lately? Dad says, no. I said, why, did you go to school with him? No. The bus came to a stop. They got off the bus. They walked down Cypress Avenue to my mom and dad's corner home. As they approached the house, their mom was standing beaming at the door. And all the time, Dad knew he should have recognized this man, but he couldn't place him. Went into the doorway. Mom greeted this tall stranger. Dad said, this man was kind enough to help me with my packages today. Isn't that nice? He even paid my bus fare. Isn't that wonderful? Praise God, that's wonderful. So, they went into the house. The stranger put the packages down. Mom gave him a big hug. Dad gave him a big hug, told him, God bless you, see you again sometime. He said, yeah, you probably will. And he turned around, walked down the stairs, down the street, and they watched him as he vanished, disappeared from sight. At that moment, my mom, God bless her, she said, that was the commander. Why didn't you know it? And Dad says, me? Why don't you know it? And then after that, Dad had a new respect for his son Frank in his experience with a man from another world. My friends, don't be surprised if by the time you arrive home or in transit, you meet someone from another world. You say, how will I know? Believe me when I say you will know. You will know. The commander told me to inform you also that this entire convention has been beamed aboard Victor 1, and they're going to be playing it for their classes of their students who come, and they love to see how people in Hawaii act when they hear the truth. Isn't that marvelous? Isn't that marvelous? Do I have another minute? Vice Commander Teal is a character. Dr. Lee Nakamura, who's 118 this past February, he bought a jet plane a few years ago, which I fly once in a while. She's got a heavy foot. How many of you like to speed? So you know you do. And she's speeding 100 miles an hour down the Nevada desert going toward Las Vegas. And this highway patrolman caught up with her. He was on a bike and a motorcycle. And he says to her, do you know how fast you were going, lady? She said, yes, about 100. He said, yes. And she says, incidentally, how is Marie? Marie, his wife. Oh, he says, oh, she's fine. Do you know her? Yeah, I've seen her once in a while. And during the course of the conversation, the officer took out his book, you know that book, and he's writing her a ticket. Speeding, the offense number, at the bottom where it says signature, he signs his name. He signs his name. Tears it off, folds it up, puts it in his pocket, and says to Vice Commander Teal, bye-bye, have a good day. She says, I will. You know, all officers, when they come home back to the office at night, back to the police station, they take out their book and they look page after page. And I don't know what went through his mind when he saw her ticket with his signature on it. But Dr. Lee made the difference. The guy didn't have to pay the fine. This is what kind of a fun woman she is. And she's interested in especially the ladies to whom we come in contact with, because she said the ladies today, they need encouragement. They need to know what their true position is in life. And they need to know that they should assume positions of leadership. And that's why I'm sharing this with you today, because I believe some of you are going to be the masters and the teachers that are going to lead people into pathways of righteousness and pathways of health, pathways of prosperity and longevity, such as they have never known before. The commander also gave me information about mastership. I think we have about 4 of those tapes left on my table about mastership. It's a CD. You get yourself one of those. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been such a tremendous pleasure for me to share this experience with you. I pray God's richest blessing rest upon all of you. Thank you.